And we're back one more time for another episode of
The Horror Guys.
I'm Brian.
I'm Kevin.
And as usual, we've got 4 movies and a short for you.
On week 246.
It is.
That's a lot of movies.
A lot of weeks.
And this is the continuation of our sequels month.
September of sequels.
September of sequels.
And we're really sticking to it this week. We've got nothing but sequels.
Heavily sequels.
What do we got?
We got Dawn of the Dead, which is a sequel, but it's not Night of the Living Dead Part 2.
It basically
Not officially.
is.
Yeah, but it is. It's a sequel. And Child's Play 2 and Subspecies
2.
Bloodstone 2, a Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master, Children of the Corn 2, and the final, in the Robocop 2. Those are the bonus films.
Yeah.
Yeah. But,
Okay, so we're going to...
Sequels everywhere.
Everywhere you look, there's more sequels popping up. It's cheaper to make a part 2 than it is to make a part 1.
Well, the first one made money, so they go for it. But I think that's the case a lot of times, saying, oh, that first one made money. People must want more. We keep making more.
Yeah, see, out of this batch here, Child's Play 2 was probably not as good as Child's Play 1.
Oh, it was mighty good.
It was good. Children of the Corn 2, The Final Sacrifice, it was pure garbage.
That was awful. Yeah.
Robocop 2, not as good as Part 1 either.
Yeah.
Not by a long shot.
It lacked a lot of things, yeah. So of these, I think the successes for sequels were Dawn of the Dead, Child's Play 2, and Subspecies 2. Nightmare on Elm Street 4.
It was fine.
Yeah.
I have never been blown away with Nightmare on Elm Street.
Oh.
They're fine, but I'm not a big fan. If another one came out, we'd watch it because we had to, not because I wanted to.
Because you have to complete the whole set.
Of the bunch, which did you think was probably the best?
Dawn of the Dead, by far. Of these.
Keeping in mind this is the
batch.
old Dawn of the Dead, not the remake.
Yeah.
Okay.
Of these. But I actually liked the Dawn of the Dead remake better than the original Dawn of the Dead.
And I think most people would agree with you. At the time, the original Dawn of the Dead was super classic.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the remake is a much better movie.
But this one was good. I liked it.
I'm totally hooked on Subspecies now.
Those were all consistent.
They were. They're very consistent.
They're very consistent. If you liked the first one, you should like them all. They don't get better. They don't get worse. Actually, the one sequel later does get a hair better, I thought. They add more stuff to it. The one with the bad doctor. I think that's number 4.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. But yeah, if you like the first one, that's rare when you can say that about a series of sequels.
I'm really kind of shocked that
consistent.
Subspecies has never had a TV series.
Yeah.
It seems like it would lend itself really well to it.
Yeah, it does.
There's a lot of lore going on there. There's a lot of backstory there.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the people involved just didn't want to do it.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
All right, so we're going to start out going back in time to 1978. Before all the remakes, we're going to watch Dawn of the Dead. And it was written and directed by George Romero. Stars David Emge, Ken Foree, Scott Reiniger, and Galen Ross. 2 hours and 7 minutes. So it's the longest of the zombie movies
Dawn
of the original
Dead,
3.
The 1978. Next morning.
No, not exactly.
Well, not exactly.
But it does follow up reasonably close after the initial one, within a week or two.
And the greatest way to summarize this when you're discussing this with the other one, somebody asks, is that the one in the mall?
It is the one in the mall.
There
yes.
you go. And everybody knows that.
The main character of this movie is the mall.
Any mid-level horror fan who, has kind of seen some of them or, isn't solid on which one is which and everything, is that the one in the mall? Yep.
Well, spoiler-free, it's an excellent shuffling zombie movie with lots of action, gore, and characters you care about. This is before zombies learn to run. The setting, mostly in the mall, is fun too. It made us nostalgic for the days when malls were more of a thing, with better variety of store types in them. We would rank it as the top of the original trilogy.
Yeah, there's still a few holdout gigantic malls that have a huge selection of stores and stuff.
I don't think malls in general are anywhere near.
That's where I was going. Local malls, cities malls, just the regular ones are blah. They're if they're still open, they're all clothing stores, heavily clothing stores. Very few interesting stores. A lot of them are just half empty or worse.
Yeah, I remember when I was little.
So this was kind of a nostalgic thing, because this is how I remember malls being.
Malls were the center. Well, they even mention it here. The mall was the center of many people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
They come here out of habit because that's what people do.
Yeah.
And I think young people today, maybe not even all that young anymore, don't realize what a big deal malls used to be.
Mm-hmm.
After school, you'd go to the mall to hang out.
Yeah.
Now they got signs saying no one under 18 admitted or
on
whatever.
a Saturday, go and hang out at the mall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or even after you're dead, you can go hang out at the mall.
You can go back and try to shop some more.
All right. Well, tell us what happens.
Well, a news crew watches some experts arguing about the current situation on the news. They're arguing about the dead rising from the ground after the first film, The Night of the Living Dead. So this takes place a little bit after that. The man on the TV explains all the rules of the zombies. So they
Shoot them in the head and so forth.
We're at a transition point. The zombies have not taken over everything yet. They're enough to be noticeable everywhere.
They're a problem.
But there's still plenty of humans, so yeah, there's still some hope, but yeah, they're fighting them. Well, the people behind the cameras comment on the authorities' mishandling of the situation. And there's an argument with the producer, and the news people all walk off the job. Well, martial law has been declared, and things are falling apart pretty quickly. Well, Stephen comes in and tells Fran to meet him on the roof at 9. He'll bring the helicopter. These are news people. Well, meanwhile, the mostly racist police are surrounding an apartment building full of minority criminals. They're still fighting crime.
Are they criminals, though?
Yeah.
Oh, they are, okay.
Yeah, it was gangsters. There was drug stuff. But they seem kind of eager to shoot a lot of them. They're definitely, trigger-happy cops, Well, the Puerto Ricans shoot first, and it's a bloody mess. But the problem is that there's zombies in the mix now. Well, Roger is with the cops, and he helps them raid the place. He ends up shooting one of his own bloodthirsty men to stop them. And there are undead in the apartments, overflowing and in the hallways, and this is all very traumatizing for Roger, who leaves and meets up with Peter, another cop. Roger tells Peter about his friend with the helicopter. An old priest comes in and talks about the dead in the next room. And what they see next, convinces them to run for it.
Whole room full of dead people.
Yeah.
Who aren't dead.
And like these two guys, it's still to the point where people are not quite on board with, like, oh, the dead are not rising. That's not possible. But they become convinced. Yeah. Well, Stephen and Fran refuel the helicopter and run into armed men. But Peter and Roger arrive and scare away the looters, and the four fly away. Well, Peter's a black man, and there's some mild tension right there from the start, but they work it out.
He talks about his brothers.
Mm-hmm.
You mean real brothers or like black brothers? It was a 70s thing.
Yeah, 70s humor. Yeah, but they're all getting along okay. They fly over the army and rednecks hunting in big parties, and it is like a party. It shows it going on.
Beers and everything.
Yeah, and target and shooting at the living dead. Yeah. Well, they stop for more fuel, run into more of the undead. We see that Stephen's not a very good shot. Without anything better in mind, they land on the roof of a shopping mall. And from the skylight, it looks like there's not that many dead inside. So they get down, they barricade themselves in the mall offices and eat survival rations for the night. And this place is, for some reason, is equipped like a bunker. It's got a whole room full of MREs and water and stuff. Lucky for them. Well, Peter suggests that they can clear out the entire mall and have access to everything. So they turn on the lights, music, fountains, escalators, the whole thing. Zombie shoppers all get confused, shuffling around. They take advantage of the confusion. Peter and Roger break into a Penny's and go shopping. And they have a lot of fun. Wind up with a wheelbarrow full of supplies.
Do they still have Penny's?
Some malls do. I think it still exists.
There's none around here anymore.
Yeah, I don't.
Penny's,
not
and
here,
Sears,
but I think
Kmart, all gone.
Oh, Kmart is gone. Yeah.
Sears is gone.
Are they
Yeah.
completely?
Oh, I
Completely?
think
No?
so.
Okay, I thought they were still clinging on.
Well, they're none around here.
No, yeah. Well, Stephen manages to kill a zombie finally. He gets his kill. And they use the fact that some stores have 2 levels to their advantage. And they're doing their thing. Fran tries to defend herself against the littlest, weakest zombie ever. There's a Hare Krishna, with a tambourine.
I get you with my tambourine. Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah. Well, the three guys are out in the mall, and she's in the office area by herself, and this one zombie manages to wander in. And there is a lot of dark comedy in this.
Yes.
And that was definitely a point. Like this, how innocuous is a little Hare Krishna guy with a tambourine.
And he's a tiny little guy with big glasses. So
yeah, smaller than her, and yet, it's an undead, so she's absolutely terrified, and he's trying to bite her. So, Well, the guys do get back just in time to rescue her. Stephen mentions that Fran is pregnant, and the couple talks about whether an abortion is a good idea or not.
This was in the 70s.
Abortion was, different then. And thought of different then. Plus the situation they're in, like, is this where you want to have a kid? So there's some debate, Well, Fran says that the bright and pretty mall is kind of a prison too. It's just a big one. But we've got everything we need right here. But she wants to learn how to fly the helicopter herself too, just in case.
Just in
case something happens to Stephen. He's the only one who knows how to fly it. So. Well, we cut to zombies shambling through the things they did in real life. They kind of act out of habit. Peter and Roger drive semi-trucks to block the mall's entryways. And that's not as easy as it sounds, but they get the job done. There's some close calls, and Roger cracks up a bit. And Peter picks him up right away, but Roger gets sloppy and gets bit.
Oops.
And we know what that means.
I think he knows what that means, too.
I think they know what that means, yeah. Well, they bring Roger inside and bandage him up, and he's in a lot of pain. Peter and Stephen drop down into the hunting store for guns and ammo, and then they take one of the prize cars for a ride, shooting as they drive through the place. They lock the mall doors from the inside. Doesn't take long to hunt down and kill all the zombies inside the mall, and then it's cleanup time.
It took surprisingly longer than I thought it did, from my memory, to get rid of all the zombies inside.
Yeah.
There were a lot in there.
There were quite a few, yeah. Their initial assessment looking through the skylight, it didn't look like very many, but yeah, there were lots of them in there.
Yeah, it took a while.
Yeah. Well, Fran says that Roger's leg infection is getting worse. Peter says he's seen lots of guys get bitten, and none lasted more than 3 days, so they all know what's going to happen. The guys make a fake wall, and they decide they're really going to hide out because what if humans show up? Well, so they build a false wall and basically hide the rooms that they're in, which is very clever, I think. And then we get a shopping for free at the mall montage. Peter says when there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth. But they're still outside, pawing at the windows, trying to get in, but they can't. So they're good for now. Except Roger takes a turn for the worst. He knows what's coming, and as much as the rest of them, and asks Peter to take care of him when he goes. He doesn't want to try to come back. Well, he does die, and he does in fact come back, and Peter does take care of it.
He's sitting there with a gun waiting for him to get up, and it takes care of things quickly.
Yeah, he does, yeah. Well, months pass. Fran is looking more pregnant. The news broadcasts end, and Stephen starts to lose hope and gets antsy. So things are getting worse outside, apparently. Stephen teaches Fran how to fly the helicopter, but the problem is some raiders, a motorcycle gang, spots the helicopter in the air and follows it to the mall, planning to get in. And they are well-armed. I mean, they're kind of chaotic, but they're tough and well-armed, and they're ready for battle. Well, they have to fight all the zombies in the parking lot first.
There's a lot of zombies out there.
So there's quite a scene of battling zombies. Inside, Stephen and Peter lock up all the stores so that it'll look like they were never there. And the men outside do get in, break the big doors, which also lets more zombies inside. Stephen says the mall is ours and starts shooting at the raiders. Of course, this tips them off that the mall isn't empty. Peter climbs back into their hiding place, but one of the raiders sees him go in. Well, Stephen gets trapped in an elevator shaft and is shot in the arm. The raiders have what they came for and ride out, leaving a mess behind them.
Yeah, if Stephen hadn't been shooting at them, they'd have just taken what they wanted and gone.
Yeah, they would have been better off.
They didn't want to live in the mall.
Yeah, just should have barricaded themselves and let them have what they wanted, yeah.
Which was their plan all along. He just wasn't big on following instructions.
Yeah. Well, Stephen gets bitten before Peter can get to him. Well, Fran wants to run to Stephen, but Peter said it's better just to wait and see. We see later that Stephen is a zombie now, too. And since zombies act on instinct, he makes his way back to the hideout, and the other zombies follow him. Well, Peter sees him coming, tells Fran to go up to the helicopter, get away from there. He doesn't want to go along. Peter shoots Stephen, and Peter puts a gun to his own head, and he thinks he's going to kill himself, and then changes his mind. Runs to the helicopter.
Talk about changing your mind at the last minute.
And Fran has just about taken off, but she waits for him. They don't have much fuel, but it's better than staying there.
Is it, though?
Just the two of them. We don't know what happens to them after that.
Okay, so this is, in our opinion, the best of the original trilogy.
You betcha.
I mean, the original is a super classic, but this one's really got a much better story. Mm-hmm. The first one is the dead rise up and some people hide in a house and spend the night.
Yeah.
The third one is just dumb. That's the one where the army base gets attacked, and everyone in that movie is just stupid.
There's a lot of bad choices made in that movie. Yeah.
But forgetting the zombies, who wouldn't want to live in a mall?
Mm-hmm. A mall from that era.
And I think that was the best part of the movie, is the fantasy of living in the mall and having everything you could want.
Mm-hmm.
People today do not know how malls used to be. Well, I thought it was fascinating to see how the inside of a mall worked with the controls and the power plants and all that industrial stuff underneath.
Mm-hmm.
And this is exactly what malls of the 70s and 80s really looked like. This was filmed in a real mall.
Yeah.
The stores on the wall, many of them at least, were recognizable.
Yeah, they filmed at night when the mall was closed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
As the remake showed us, the whole thing gets a lot harder when the zombies aren't slow. The individual zombies in this one are not particularly tough or scary. They're just shambling dead folks. There's a lot of gore, but the zombies are mostly just people painted blue. It's got the expected humor and social satire, but it's living in the mall that really sells this one, I think.
Yeah, me too. Liked it.
Yeah. Okay, what's next?
A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master, from 1998. This is Freddy Strikes Back.
Yes.
Yeah. Which was directed by Rennie Harlan, written by Wes Craven, William Kotzwinkle, and Brian Helgeland?
Works for me.
Okay. It stars Robert Englund, Rodney Eastman, and John Beckman. Runtime's an hour and 33 minutes. There's a trailer in the show notes.
Spoiler free, what happens?
This continues from the third one, if you recall. That was the Dream Warriors. And there were some surviving Dream Warriors, same actors, in fact, from the last film. And it goes with that, continues with them, and expands on more of the dream fighting and dream sharing idea. And this one really has a steady body count as Freddy kills his way through a bunch of youngsters. All in all, if you liked 3, you'll probably like this one. It's about the same level.
Yeah, more psychic teens.
Yeah, and kind of very much a continuation of the same story from 3.
Well, we open at Freddy's house. Kirsten goes inside and strange things start happening. The house is all torn up and looks very haunted. Through a series of unfortunate events, she winds up in the basement of an old factory. Huh? Well, she calls for Joey and Kincaid to come and help her, and they're both pulled into her dream as well. They're the Dream Warriors. They can pull each other into dreams and fight back.
Uh-huh.
It's Freddy. He was here. He's coming back for us.
But wait, he was destroyed at the end of the third movie.
That's what the boys say.
How can Freddy come back?
Yeah, in the dream, a giant dog bites her, and all 3 teens wake up. Well, as the teenagers go to school, we get to meet some of the other characters. Alice has a crush on Dan. Rick and Kristen are a couple. Kincaid and Joey weren't... Is it Kristen or Kirsten?
I think it's Kristen.
Okay. Warns Kristen not to go into dreams anymore. They might just stir things up. Leave it alone. After school, we see that Alice and Rick don't have a great family life. Kincaid talks to his dog, Jason. The dog's name is Jason?
Jason.
Huh.
There's
and
a tribute.
Then he nods off. He wakes up in the junkyard where Freddy's bones were burned. There's a flaming earthquake, and Freddy's bones reassemble.
Uh-oh.
He's back, and Kincaid is dead. Joey also goes to sleep and sees a mermaid in his waterbed. Freddy jumps out, and soon it's Joey inside the waterbed. Well, Kristen goes to school and knows what happened when Kincaid and Joey don't show up.
And And if we could just pause there for a moment, I always had a problem with his death. You know,
The waterbed?
yeah, the parental unit comes in and screams because he's inside the water mattress.
Uh-huh.
And how did this happen? You know, and there's no, you know, there's no comment further anywhere in the movie. Like, well, that's physically impossible. Nobody says, you know, how did he drown in the waterbed mattress inside it? You know what I mean? There's just no comment whatsoever about how physically impossible that is, and that has always bothered me. Even then, it bothered me, and it still does.
If you cut it open in any place, it is going to spill everywhere.
And it wasn't cut open. It was still sealed. He was inside it. But there's no mention of that.
It's a suicide.
Kincaid died last night. No. Oh, Joey. No, it's Joey.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kincaid was the junkyard guy.
Okay, well,
Yeah. Anyway, just a point that bothers me.
Kristen, Alice, Rick, and Dan go to Freddy's old house. Kristen's mother interrupts and takes Kristen home before dosing her with sleeping pills. Oh, that's not good.
You're going to get a good night's sleep, young lady.
Kristen dreams of herself at the beach until Freddy shows up as a shark. She soon finds herself in Freddy's basement again, and this time she pulls Alice into her nightmare too. Freddy kills Kristen, but first, Kristen gives Alice her dream power. So yeah, in the first 15 or 20 minutes, they have just managed to kill all the original cast from the previous movie.
You know, it's another one of those, at least it wasn't quite as abrupt, but it's one of those where, you know, those people you liked from the previous movie,
Doom.
We'll just get rid of them right away and start with new people.
Dream Warriors, the next generation.
Yeah.
Well, Alice talks to Sheila, the math whiz and inventor stereotype, with asthma. Sheila nods off during a big exam. Freddy appears and kisses her, and he sucks her dry. Back in class, she dies of an asthma attack. Dan and Alice talk about Freddy. He doesn't believe her story. Rick tells Dan their town's history isn't exactly safe for teenagers. Alice sits through a really boring class lecture on dreams. They're talking about dreams. It makes you want to go to sleep.
Yep, it does. And have
Rick
some dreams.
goes to sleep in the restroom and ends up in Freddy's world. Rick is killed in a ninja battle against the invisible Freddy. Dan and Deb try to console Alice, who's now lost everybody she knows.
Almost everybody.
They come to the conclusion that Alice changes a little after each of her friends' deaths. Now she can work the nunchucks just like Rick could.
She becomes more powerful
Hmm.
each time.
She needs to suck in more friends. That night, Alice and Dan go to Debbie's house, but Deb is turned into a giant bug in her dreams. Except Alice and Dan are stuck in the dreamy time loop where they can't get anywhere. Meanwhile, Freddy kills Debbie in a roach motel.
Ew.
Big bug.
Crunchy. Mm-hmm.
Alice looks at Dan and says, "I've collected like the others." Dan gets hurt in a car wreck and is sedated for surgery. Alice goes through all her new abilities, and we get her getting ready for dream combat montage before taking some sleeping pills. The doctors wake Dan up, leaving Alice alone with Freddy. Alice uses karate against Freddy, but he laughs it off. "You've got their power, but I've got their souls." She blows a hole through Freddy with Sheila's invention. "I am eternal," he boasts.
Yeah, that's a problem with fighting somebody who can't be hurt.
Yeah.
Really. Yeah. I remember that going back to the first one where she's having the dream and Freddy, you know, lops off his own fingers with his razor hand.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, at that moment I was like, oh, they're doomed. Like, what are you going to do against this guy? If he can do that to himself and, you know, he can't be hurt, you know, how are you going to fight him? Yeah, you're going to lose.
You can't.
Yeah.
Alice holds up a mirror for Freddy to see himself, and all the souls he's eaten tear their way out of him. Freddy dies, and all the souls escape. What?
Okay.
There's never been a mirror in any of these movies before? Well, anyway, out in the real world, Dan and Alice talk. She sees Freddy's reflection in the fountain. Is it really all over for him?
Yes.
I'm sure we'll never see him again.
He's really dead this time, and we'll never see him again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it continues on where part 3 left off with the Dream Warriors still active, at least for as long as they live. This one expands on the idea of the dream magic by giving Alice completely different powers. She absorbs the powers of the people who die in dreams.
Uh-huh.
You know, after a while, she'd be more powerful than Freddy or anybody. if that kept going on.
But she still couldn't kill him.
Well, they really dropped like
She did
flies in
finally
this
kill
one.
him.
One dead teen after another. After all, the death is kind of integral to the plot. She needs the powers. Robert Englund got top billing this time, and he is hammier than ever now.
We're entering the hammy phase of Freddy. Yeah.
Yeah, he was not funny in the first movie. He was a very serious, scary guy.
Serious, yeah.
He had a few quips in the second one, but yeah, it's
It's to the full quip point. No.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right. Well, how about our short film?
It's one called Caught, which was brand new this year, and directed and written by Douglas Sullivan. Stars Matt O'Leary, Jessica Cook, Decker Ordoin, and the runtime.
It's not that long.
It's not an hour. The runtime
It's a short film.
It's a short film, and we have made a mistake here in our notes on the runtime. It's a short film. Well, synopsis: Carter's mom tells him he has to be really quiet, and of course he laughs. And he's not the least bit quiet. She tells him to hide under the bed and then turn out the lights. Mom's clearly not playing a game, and Dad looks really serious as well when he comes in. And then they hear growling outside the cabin.
Yeah, you know there's a monster or something bad outside, and this kid won't stop giggling and talking, and you know how kids are. They never shut up.
And this kid in particular seems worse than usual. Yeah, he's just really not being quiet here.
Well, telling a kid to be quiet is like telling a cat to sit. It's just impossible.
Pretty much.
Actually, kids just make everything more difficult. If you expect you'll be living in a horror film, you probably just shouldn't have them.
Well, this one proves that point, right?
It's well filmed, it looks great, and has a creature you wouldn't expect. Very nice. We liked it.
Yeah, very nicely done.
All right, well, let's see. Oh, my favorite of the week.
Bloodstone.
Bloodstone, Subspecies II, 1993. Directed by Ted Nicolau. Written by Charles Band and Ted Nicolau. Stars Anders Hove, Denise Duff, Kevin Spiritus, and Melanie Shatner. Hour and 26 minutes.
And Melanie Shatner is, yes, that Shatner.
Yes, the daughter of William Shatner.
Yes.
There's not really much resemblance there.
No, there isn't. Yeah, and she's a better actor, I think.
she talks like a normal person.
Yes.
So spoiler-free what it's about.
Well, this was a good sequel on par with the first one, maybe even a little better. The practical effects and makeup are really good, lots of gore, lots of gross outs, and it leaves us well set up for the third film, which they actually filmed simultaneously.
Yes.
So they were ready for the sequel this time.
So we watched the first Subspecies, I don't know, 5 or 6 months ago, and there's a link in the show notes to watch that. And then there's actually 5 of them now. The 5th one came out just this year after like a 20-year hiatus.
And that's a prequel.
It is a prequel. So there was Subspecies 1, 2, 3, and 4, which were regular. Then there was a spin-off thing called Vampire Journals. Not the Vampire Diaries, that's something else.
Right.
Which does not have Radu, the main vampire. It's about other vampires. And then there's a 5th one, which just came out actually just a couple months ago. It's on Tubi, and it is a prequel.
Same guy.
Same guy.
And Anders Hove playing Radu.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway,
He makes a good vampire. He looks
he's weird.
Good.
He's just, yeah.
Yeah, he's an odd fellow, and he looks good at he's good at this role. Yeah. Like it.
We get a quick voiceover recapping the first film. Radu bit the girl, but ended up getting staked in the end and decapitated. Well, we zoom in on Radu's head, but his little demon friends drag it over to his body, and then they pull the stake out. It's good to have little demon friends. His head grows tendrils, like in the thing, and it connects to his body. He stands up, looking pretty healthy, considering. I wouldn't say he looks good, but...
Yeah, he's standing.
He then opens his brother Stefan's coffin and stakes him to take the Bloodstone. The sun comes up before he can stake Michelle, though. And Michelle is the girl vampire that he bit at the end of the first movie.
Radu is hard to kill. Yeah.
He is.
And for those who don't recall or don't know, the Bloodstone that the fuss is all about, it's a magical, ancient artifact that vampires can sip from.
The blood of saints.
Yeah, and it's an infinite supply of blood that'll sustain them without having to kill people. And it also can give them extra juice, extra powers, extra mojo, too. So it's really coveted.
Yeah, it's the thing.
Yeah.
Night eventually comes, and Michelle looks at what's left of Stefan. She pulls his stake out, but nothing happens. She pries the bloodstone out of his cold, dead fingers and then hides before Radu can show up. When he does, he's not happy. Why didn't he just take the bloodstone with him the previous night?
It seems like he could have grabbed it quick.
Yeah.
I mean, he was in a hurry.
Yeah, he was.
Still, it was right there. Just grab it and take it with you.
Michelle runs back to her cabin and gets clothes and a passport. Remember, she was human yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
She can only barely see her reflection in the mirror, so something's not good there.
Yeah, that's a problem.
She then runs to the train station and boards one of the trains, and we see that Radu is not far behind. She gets off in Bucharest, where she calls Becky, her sister, back home, who has no idea what's going on, but agrees to come and help. Radu goes to see his mother. He killed his father in the previous movie.
Mm-hmm.
And his mother looks like the crypt keeper.
Very much so.
His
Yeah.
mummy,
His
as he
mummy.
calls her.
Yeah.
And yes, she does look like a mummy.
Yeah, she looks about 1,000 years old. Yeah.
Well, he gives her a dagger with his
It's been a
father's...
rough life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He gives her a dagger with his father's blood on it, and she's pleased until he admits that he's lost the Bloodstone. She does a spell and gives him instructions on how to be victorious. Michelle wakes up she's a bit of a witch.
Mm-hmm.
She's not a vampire.
Magic powers.
Yeah. Michelle wakes up at sunrise and has to hide in the motel's bathroom to avoid the sunlight. Housekeeping comes in and opens the window wide before getting to work. They find what looks like a dead woman in the bathtub.
Yeah, and apparently she is. She's unresponsive and looks dead.
Vampires are? Well, that's inconsistent in this series.
It
Sometimes
is.
they're dead in the daytime. Sometimes they're just lazy.
It is inconsistent, yeah. And sometimes, like Radu, it can be, sometimes they can be up and about in the day as long as they stay out of the sun. So
Maybe it's because she's new.
They're a little inconsistent.
She's dead tired.
Yeah.
Well, the police inspector arrives and immediately notices the bite mark on her legs. They carry her away. Yeah, people in this series keep looking at the neck for blood wounds.
Mm-hmm.
And you can be bit other places.
Yeah, you can. And they do in this series.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
They carry her away in a body bag. And he also finds the Bloodstone. He doesn't know what it is. But she wakes up in the truck and mayhem ensues. She breaks into an antique shop and finds a glass coffin to sleep in. I guess this antique shop is closed because she spends quite a bit of time there.
She spends the day there, yeah.
Sometime the next day, Becky, Michelle's sister, arrives. She goes to the hotel, and the police come to tell her that her sister was found unconscious and then vanished. Lieutenant Marin and Mel from the embassy come to question her. They give her the stone, but she doesn't know what it is. Night falls, and Michelle starts stalking a man. She follows him to a loud goth dance club. She sprouts fangs, but can't bring herself to bite the guy.
But she's really thirsty.
She goes back to her glass coffin and cries herself to sleep. Becky and Mel go to interview an old professor, Popescu, about Michelle's research project. They investigate an old vampire legend. They show him the Bloodstone, but he says he doesn't know what it could be. But he does volunteer to go with them to the monastery where Michelle and her friends were last seen. They go to the legendary home of the King of Vampires. The descendants of old Count Vladislav still owns the castle and grounds, but he doesn't remember their names. They find a fresh grave dug outside. Popescu leads them down into the basement of the castle. He knows a way in.
Mm-hmm.
Mel, who builds a castle with a back door?
Oh, they should have a back door. They probably have a side door on both sides, too.
Well, Mel complains that it's getting late and they should head back. They go upstairs and all the torches are already lit. This is one of my pet peeves in horror movies.
Who lit the torches?
You go down to this deep
Who lit all
cave
those candles?
that nobody's been into for 1,000 years, and there's candles lit everywhere.
Or torches, or both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Radu wakes up and comes right to them. He tells them to leave, and they do. Well, nothing further.
Well, that was easy.
You're in my castle. Get out. Oh, sorry, sir. We're gone.
Yeah.
He's a weird-looking guy, but they don't seem to notice. Well, Radu then follows them into town. Becky goes to her motel as Michelle watches from the shadows. Becky catches up and demands to know what's going on. Michelle takes the Bloodstone back from Becky and takes off again. Michelle drinks from the Bloodstone, which solves her hunger problem.
She feels much better after that.
Radu shows up, makes a speech, and takes the stone away. Radu then takes the Bloodstone to his mummy. He complains about Michelle's blood polluted by his good brother. If you remember back in the first film, Stefan was the one who actually was he the one who actually turned her?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, and he's a good vampire, so she's kind of a mess.
So she's got, goodness in her.
Ew.
Ew.
Becky tells Marin and Mel about her meeting with Michelle. Popescu tells them the story of King Vlad and the Bloodstone. Lieutenant Marin says the story of Dracula is a myth, but he shows them a picture of the Bloodstone. Mel doesn't believe any of it, but Becky does. She's seen the Bloodstone.
Yeah, Dracula's a myth, but King Vlad is real.
They're kind of the same person in the first film. At least that was the impression I got.
Kinda, but here they're saying, nah, that Dracula, that's just a story.
Well, they would, wouldn't they?
Yes.
Michelle returns to the dance club and picks up that same guy she abandoned the previous night. This time she does bite him, but gags on the blood. But she gets over it real fast and finishes him off. Meanwhile, Radu pays a visit to Becky, who is asleep in her room. He's about to bite her when the phone rings. It's Michelle, begging for help again. Becky finds Michelle, who is covered in the dancer's blood. It's about dawn, and Radu shows up. Michelle doesn't want to die, so she agrees to go with him for the day. They find a tomb, and they both go to sleep.
Someplace in the dark.
Becky goes back to Popescu and updates both him and Mel about Radu. Popescu has all the tools a vampire hunter would need. Mel bows out, thinking it's all insane. He works for the embassy. It's not political. Popescu and Becky go back into that same tomb, and they find the unhappy couple asleep inside. Popescu then falls over. Turns out Mummy, who's not a vampire, has stabbed him from behind.
Yeah, she can stay up all day.
The old woman cackles maniacally.
Very crypt keepery.
Very. Yeah. Night falls, and Michelle eventually wakes up to hear Radu and Mummy tormenting Becky. Radu offers to share Becky's blood with Michelle, and Michelle is tempted. Instead, Michelle stabs him in the face with a knife and sets Mummy on fire. And I like how they never name this person. She's just Mummy.
Mummy, yeah.
Radu gets up and stabs his shadow with a knife. The shadow then turns into his real hand, so she stabs him several more times, including once right in the skull.
Oh.
He falls down.
That's gotta hurt, even if you are a vampire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Michelle releases Becky, and Becky stakes Radu. That stops him. The two girls run outside, but it's still daylight, so Michelle pops back in. She backs herself down the hallways until Mummy grabs her from behind. Oh, that's the end of this movie. It's to be continued.
Oh, no. Good thing there's a part 3 coming up.
Good thing, yeah. Well, Radu is just as much fun as he was in the previous film. I love how his shadow behaves.
Yeah, that's some cool stuff.
Now, in the Bram Stoker's Dracula, his shadow did some weird stuff.
Mm-hmm.
This one, it's not quite that weird, but it's a very neat camera trick.
Easy for you to say.
Yeah. Still, if he'd have been more proactive rather than just lurking all over town, he'd have gotten what he wanted several different times.
Yeah. It felt like he was pulling his punches sometimes.
This was filmed at the same time as Part 3, so the cliffhanger ending was pretty much expected. Other than that, it's pretty good.
Yeah, pretty good.
All right, then for another sequel, we've got Child's Play 2 from 1990, directed by John Lafia, written by Don Mancini, stars Alex Vincent, the kid from the first movie.
The kid keeps coming back through many of these.
Jenny Agutter, Jarrett Graham, and of course Brad Dourif is the voice of Chucky. Mm-hmm. Hour and 24 minutes. Spoiler free. Despite the police and his mother knowing about Chucky at the end of the last movie, Andy is on his own again with no one believing him. It's sort of a throwaway line that his mother's been institutionalized. They think she's insane.
And the cops are nowhere to be seen. The ones.
The cops aren't talking.
The ones that witnessed are apparently,
Yeah. It's fast-moving and violent with a lot of dark humor and a higher body count than the first film. They put a lot of money into the effects and the sets and stepped things up quite a bit with Chucky's expressions. If you like the first Child's Play, you'll probably enjoy this.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta say I like the first one better, but I think the dolls and the effects and things were better in the second one.
Yeah, there was so much to like about this one.
Yeah.
Kind of balanced, yeah.
And if you watch the Chucky TV series, this is one of the more important films.
Yeah, it is.
All right, well, what happens?
Well, we open on the burned, melted remains of what's left of Chucky from the first film as the credits roll. And there's a montage as the skin is replaced, new limbs are added, he's spray painted with more freckles. And then we cut to a limousine driving to the good guy's factory. Mr. Sullivan gets out. The company is doing damage control over the story that got out about their murderous toy.
So they know about it too.
Mm-hmm. They've done a quality control check on the doll, and everything comes up normal. Except when the technician goes to put the eyes in, he gets shocked and blown out a window.
I'm sure that was just an accident.
Just a coincidence. Yeah, just an accident. Yeah. Well, meanwhile, Andy's in therapy. His mother has been institutionalized, it's mentioned, and he explains all about Charles Lee Ray to his social worker. Grace, the foster child coordinator, wants to send Andy to live with Phil and Joanne Simpson. On the way home, they're almost run over by a good guy's truck. Andy meets Kyle, the other foster kid in the home. She's an older woman. Okay, she's supposed to be a teenager. She's expecting to be thrown out at any time. Well, I mean, she is, so she's supposed to be right at the age where she's
aging out
of the foster system. Yeah, but in the meantime, it's big sister kind of thing. Well, Andy finds a good guy doll in the closet, and he freaks out. And Joanne apologizes and says she will get rid of Tommy, not even thinking of his previous...
I'm Tommy. I'm your friend to the end.
Well, meanwhile, the good guy's lawyer, Matson, takes the Chucky doll out to his car to dispose of. Chucky calls Grace to find out about Andy posing as Uncle Charles.
Chucky calls on the phone.
He calls Grace, and this is his Uncle Charles. I'm trying to get a hold of him. Well, Chucky fakes out Matson and grabs him from behind while he's driving, makes him drive to the Simpsons' house, and then kills the guy. So, it's the first death. And
you don't see Chucky driving cars. He has to get somebody else to do it for him.
Yeah, because he's a teeny little thing. Yeah. Well, Chucky trades places with Tommy the doll, who he buries in the backyard.
They have different names, but they all look the same.
Yes, they do. Well, Chucky has Andy tied to the bed, and they're going to play hide the soul. Then Kyle comes in and unties him. And she's like, he didn't tie himself up like that. But she seems to think, nothing of this. Like, he did that to himself. Well, Phil and Joan come in, and they think Kyle tied him up. Phil throws the doll into the basement and locks the door. And Chucky's nose is bleeding, so he knows he's turning human again. And if he doesn't get out of this body, he's screwed. He knows it. Well, Chucky follows Andy to his first day at the new school. The teacher gets mad at Andy and locks Chucky in the toy closet. Andy climbs out the window, and then Chucky kills the teacher. Phil isn't pleased with Andy's behavior. And the doll is still laying at the bottom of the stairs where Ray left him last night. It's all in Andy's head. Well, Phil and Joan argue about Andy needing more help than they can offer. Except that night, Andy takes matters into his own hands. He goes downstairs with an electric knife. He's going to dismember Chucky. Except Chucky's not there anymore.
Surprise!
Yeah. Well, Andy and Chucky fight for a bit until Phil catches Andy with the knife and, of course, gets the wrong idea. And that doesn't go anywhere because Chucky kills Phil. And, of course, they're going to blame Andy for this. Well, Joanne and Kyle soon rush in and find Phil dead, and they do get the wrong idea about Andy. So Grace comes to get Andy. He's going to be staying at the center for a while. Kyle finds the Chucky doll and takes him out to the trash can. She goes outside and finds the remains of Tommy in the dirt. And if that's Tommy, then who has Andy been playing with? She looks in the trash again, and Chucky is gone.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. And Kyle goes inside to find Joanne has been murdered as well. So Kyle is now a believer when Chucky attacks her. And she sees him clearly.
No doubt at that point.
Yeah. He makes her drive him to the orphanage center. Fire alarm center sounds and all the kids file outside. Grace confronts Kyle and Chucky, but she only lasts a few seconds. Andy and Chucky get a lift in the back of a newspaper truck, and Kyle chases after them. And they all stop and run inside the good guy's factory. "No more, Mr. Good Guy," is Chucky's quip, as he recites his voodoo spell, and the clouds begin springing up outside the building. Chucky finishes his spell and then gets a nosebleed. It's too long. It's been too long. He's stuck in the doll.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, the spell didn't work.
He's not pleased.
He is PO'd, yeah. Well, Kyle interrupts Chucky simply killing Andy, and they run through the maze of good guy boxes, which is, it's actually an amusing
Who would
arrangement.
lay out a warehouse
like
that?
It's a warehouse full of dolls, and it literally is like a maze. Yeah. Which is good for the drama. Eventually, they come to the factory portion of the building. Chucky chases them and loses a hand, which he replaces with a knife. Kyle notices the machine that melts down the defective dolls. The technician arrives to fix one of the machines, and Chucky ensures that the man gets a new set of plastic eyes.
Ow.
Yeah, that looked painful. Ouch. Chucky winds up in a furnace. "Andy, I was only playing." And then he comes out of the machine and he looks like a reject from The Thing.
He's a mess.
Except he didn't die. He cut off his own legs to avoid the machine. He attacks Andy one more time, but Andy dumps acid all over him. And there's nothing left of Chucky this time but a lump of melted plastic. Except even now he tries to get Kyle, who shoves an air hose into Chucky's mouth until he explodes. And then Kyle and Andy head home, wherever that is.
Wow. Well, Chucky's face is much more expressive this time than in the previous film. There's a lot less explanation and development here, and a lot more killing. Chucky is a lot funnier in this one than in the original film. Again, just like we were talking about with Freddy, he wasn't that funny in the first. There was comedy in the first one, but not a crazy amount.
Mm-hmm, but it's another one where they make that progression.
Now, here's the thing. With Freddy, I thought Freddy was annoying. As the movies kept going, he got funnier and funnier. He got stupid, I thought.
Mm-hmm.
Chucky, it gets funnier and funnier and just becomes a straight-up comedy in the later movies.
Yes.
And I think that works really well.
Lots of dark humor.
Yes.
Yeah. I think it works better than for Freddy.
Yeah. But it's not as original as the first one, but it is still quite good. And that's all ones we're going to read to you this week. But if you'd like to read our review of Children of the Corn 2, The Final Sacrifice from 1993, which takes place right after the first movie, we try to explain some things, but we thought it was pretty awful.
Yeah, they try to explain the lore and stuff. And it's funny with the... Okay, so the authorities and everybody descends on this town where there's nothing but children left and all the adults are dead. And half of the people seem to think, oh, the kids did this. Oh, well, we'll load them up on a bus and send them to foster homes and everything, and because they were just innocent kids. And half of them are like, oh, my God, these children are murderers. And they still load them up onto buses and just kind of send them to foster homes and stuff. And, yeah, it's like there's no, I guess, they're just innocent children or something. I don't know. It's weird the way they handle it, but
yeah.
Anyway.
And then there was Robocop 2, the sequel to the Robocop 1, which was all right. It continued the first one. They designed a brand new version of Robocop, which consists of the brain of a drug dealer inside a giant robot, and he's fueled by magic drugs.
What could go wrong?
Yeah, this one had a lot of dumbness to it.
Stars Peter Weller again, and you see his face a lot more in this one.
Yes, you do. In his contract, I think.
Mm-hmm.
All right. It was all right. It was all right. If you liked it, it was fine. It's better than Robocop 3, but it's no Robocop 1.
Yeah.
And, you can read both of those other reviews at horrorbulletin.com. And while you're there, sign up for the newsletter. It's once a week. It's free, and it's nothing but the reviews. And that's it for this week.
I bet next week we're going to watch some more movies and talk about them, aren't
we? We are. Probably a lot more sequels is my guess.
Join us then.
I'm Brian.
And I'm Kevin.
And we'll see you next week.
See ya.